Welcome. This demonstration will introduce you to key solution capabilities of Device42, Data Center Infrastructure Management Software.
Hi there folks, this is Chris Bonini with Device42, a support engineer here. Today I'll be walking you guys through a high-level overview of our product, and this will actually give you some understanding of our capabilities, and I hope the demo will be informative for you, and we're basically going to take you through the product. And what you're looking at here is actually the dashboard of Device42. You'll notice that there's some user-friendly widgets here. You guys can add or delete any of these widgets, and they're really associated to the user profile that logs in. So you have multiple people logging in, they can go ahead and have customize their login page. You'll also notice that there's a lead-on search in the middle here. This is a powerful search. I can put in an IP address, and you can see I can get right to that IP address. Now the nice thing about this is found on the home page, easy navigation throughout the product, but you'll notice that there's a search button in the top left. It actually allows you to navigate throughout the product, and that's found on all the pages. So even, I can type in the end of a device's name, and you'll see that particular device will come in. So this is nice because there's a lot of note sections within the product and a lot of custom fields that you guys can add, and anything in there can be searchable and reportable. Now, to go by an object hierarchy, you'll notice you have your buildings, which are your street addresses. And then inside those buildings, think about your data center rooms, and inside those rooms would be racks. I'm actually going to take you into one of our list pages here for rooms. Now, the nice thing about this is we have a list page for just about all of our objects here. So you become quite familiar. There's no learning curve with the view or the layout of the product. You can actually sort by columns here. You have the search button to search within the list page itself. And again, you can see that search window found on all the pages to navigate throughout the product. You have the ability here to filter. So if I want to filter by a particular building, if this was a list maybe of devices, you would see a lot more list or filter options. And then you'll also notice that you have the ability to add an object here. So there's many ways to add objects in the product, but here's one way that you can kind of do it on a one-off basis. Now, what I'm going to do is actually show you a room layout. Now, this is what we kind of call a top-down logical view of a data center floor space. You'll notice in the middle here that you actually have this beveled end. This represents the front of a rack, and the flat part represents the back of the rack. And you'll also notice as I'm hovering over, it's giving me some high-level information about the name of the rack, the size of it, and also the available use. And you can see actually colors on here, red and green, yellow and orange. This is actually representing the RU capacity. So if I hover over something that's green, you'll actually see that there's more U's available, 38 out of 42. And then also if I go over something that's red like we were before, it's showing that there's only 6 out of 42 U's available, so a limited amount of space. You can see that you can get to the layout of the rack, any connections or details, and also power utilization charts. So you'll notice one of these racks has vertical bars. These actually represent our intelligent PDUs that are attached to this rack. So we basically have 2 intelligent PDUs, and we actually have 3 infeeds for each of these PDUs. So we show you that power that's being consumed either from a bank level or an infeed level or an outlet level over a specific amount of time. So let's say 12 hours or 1 year, that you'll be able to see that data and see how much power you're consuming over a period of time. On the left here, you'll notice there's an edit button. I can turn on this edit mode, and now I can make this room larger or smaller either way. I have the ability to put in grid coordinates, so whether you want alphabetical or numeric values, you guys can really represent what you have in your floor space. You have these room object templates. This is great to represent UPSs, crack units, even if it's a column or a staircase or a wall within the data center floor space, you guys again could represent that within the product. You'll also notice here that I can stretch these out. So I can stretch racks out, I can move them around. So very user-friendly tool and easy to do this right within the GUI. Now if I hover over a rack, you'll notice I can get right to a layout of the rack. And this is great because what happens here is we provide this front and rear elevation view of a rack. And the nice thing about this, you'll notice that we have these images. These are actually photorealistic drawings that we provide in Device42. However, you guys can actually add your own images. So whether it's a JPEG, PNG, or bitmap file, you guys can add your own images and associate it to that hardware model. And then once you add it to a rack, it'll fit it into that crop it into that rack space. You'll also notice here that you get some details of the rack. You can get to the connections of the rack. You have these nameplate options. This is nice because you can see asset tag information, serial number, and this brings up a good point. One thing is we can actually generate QR and barcodes within the product, so you guys can actually use a tablet device. Our screens were done in HTML5, so IE 9 or above, Mozilla, Chrome, Safari, any type of browser will work with our product itself, and you guys can actually go in there, make changes to it right from your tablet device. Now if I hover over some of these objects, you'll see that it gives me some high-level information. So here I can see this is a core switch. I can see the blades that are part of this switch, and if I actually scroll down here, you'll actually see that I can get to an impact chart of this switch. So before I show you some of these impact charts, you're probably wondering, well, how do you guys discover the devices, or how do you get the devices in the system? So if I go under Tools Auto Discovery, you'll see here that we have different auto discovery methods. So first of all, they're all agentless. Nothing has to be installed on every node in the network. We're using different protocols to go out there and collect this data. So as long as you have read-only access to some of these protocols, you'll be able to collect that data. So for instance, networking, we're using SNMP, but then we might be using, for Windows, we're using WMI, SSH for Linux. And then for otherwise, we're talking natively to some of those vendor APIs. So VMware APIs, Cisco UCS Manager you see in there, we talk to their APIs. And its cloud would be like Amazon, Microsoft Azure, DigitalOcean, CloudStack, OpenStack. We can communicate with their APIs and pull in the devices that you guys might have in cloud. Now, you also see that we integrate with DNS and Active Directory, so it's a nice way to bring all your users over, all your zone records over, and have them all documented in with Device42. Now, when auto discovery happens, the nice thing about it is it creates these impact charts, and the nice thing about that is with these impact charts, you guys can actually see your dependencies between devices, maybe where a blade sits in a chassis, or where a VM is running on, if it's running on one particular blade, or if it's running on a host, what host it's running on. So one thing I want to show you, if I hover over a chassis down at the bottom, you'll see I can see the blades in it, I can navigate to the blades, I can navigate to the chassis, and I can click on an impact chart. Now let me just change the view here so this can actually look a little bit more in tune. You'll actually see here, if I zoom in, this is the name of that chassis. Now don't worry about the name so much, but this is the name of the chassis. This is the blades. These are the blades that are part of that chassis. So we picked this up all through auto discovery. And you'll notice here that we actually have some virtual machines. These virtual machines were also picked up through auto discovery, and we were able to tell what device or what blade that particular VM was running on. And the nice thing about this is, again, this is all done through the auto discovery process, but you can have the best monitoring system out there. You have an IP address go down, or you have a device go down, you can use Device42 to navigate to that device, see who's responsible for that device, see what services are running on the device, see the dependencies, what VM is running on what blade, or if it is a blade, what slot is it located in, so you can kind of pinpoint what's being affected within your network. Now if I go back to the rack layout, you'll notice that we also do an impact chart from the network side of things. So what I'll do down here is actually click on an impact chart here. So not only when you do a discovery on your firewalls, your switches, your routers, we pick up the model. We'll actually for switches pull in your ARP tables, your VLANs, your subnets, but we actually associate devices connected to ports based on the MAC address. So what you can see here is we'll actually pick up all the ports associated to that switch. And then you can actually see switch-to-switch connections. So as you start doing more auto discoveries within your environment, we're actually matching that MAC address to discover what port it's sitting on. You'll also see here that you have some devices. These darker icons actually represent devices, and this was all picked up through auto discovery. Now if I click on Follow Remote Ports here, this will actually show me not just my switch-to-switch connections, but anything that I might have running on those remote switches as well. So again, it's a nice way to give you that full layer 2 map of your network environment. So now if I go back to this rack layout, you actually see that we can see some connections in the map. You can get to a PDU of the map. The one thing I want to do is click on physical connections, because you can see there was 2 PDUs that were on the left and the right side of the rack, and you can also see that there's network connections. So let me turn off power for now. You'll notice power is in black, network is actually represented in blue. So if I actually check off power, just so you can see, if I hover over any of these patch panel ports, I can see those hops from that patch panel port. So you can see the network connections here, and I'll show you how easy these were done. Now you'll also notice as we discover some of these switch ports, and like I said, matching the MAC address, if I hover any of those switch ports, we can actually pick up if there's a device connection as well, and any hops that are going on the left side there as well. If I hover over device, you can see those network connections again on the left and on the right side. So whether this is within the rack or outside the rack, we will show these connections. Now I can just simply turn on this edit mode, And by turning on this edit mode, you'll see here I can drag and drop, and I can make connections to the other ports. So it's very simple to make a new connection. And I can also do this on the power side. So if I go and check off power here, you'll notice again I can drag and drop, and I can make connections to any of these outlets. And if I hover over, I can see the power connections to what outlet that specific device is connected to. And the last part is the reporting. If you notice under reports here, if I hover over to the right, that we have the ability to add a report for just about any object that's in the system. And this is great because with these reports, it's one thing to collect data and have a nice way to collect data, but it's another way to be able to report on it. So here you can actually report on it. We'll give you string values at the top. All our reports can be scheduled, whether it's a monthly, weekly, or daily basis. You guys have the capability to do that within the product. And our last and final feature is our Excel import and export sheets that are built on our APIs. So the nice thing about this is we can auto-discover all your devices, but what about things that can't be auto-discovered? Or what about all the current Excel sheets that you guys are currently using? So if you go under Tools, Import Exports, you'll see that we give you the ability to download your current data so you can make changes in Excel, use the Excel filter tool, and kind of do a drag and drop and make all those changes. So if you're moving racks to a different room, rather than going into every rack and making those changes, you can do that right from Excel. You can also download one of our sample files, and it'll allow you to make changes or add data in there for things that can't be discovered. For instance, let's say add devices to racks. If you open up this file, you'll see that you have the ability to put in the name of the device that's already discovered in there in the system, and then also the name of the rack, and then you can say what use slot that you want that device to go to, import that Excel sheet, and then it's going to make those following changes for you. You'll also notice in the middle that you have the ability to view documentation. So if I go up here to buildings, I can view documentation, and it'll bring me straight to our Device42 API site, and you'll see here that we have our full APIs available with the curl examples on the right. And basically you'll have your get calls, your create and update calls, your delete calls, and even down to the custom fields for that particular object. Well, I hope this sums it up for you guys, and it was great to have you guys on board. And if you want to look forward to seeing a full demo, or you guys have any questions, please send an email to support@device42.com, and we'd be happy to assist you. Thank you.